morning in Toronto, Canada, magandang umaga, and good evening, magandang gabi to people at the Philippines. Today's thematic is entitled Belief, Folklore, and Intergenerational Connections in Film Narratives. But to start us off, I have Natalie Wahlberger to start us off with the land acknowledgement.
Thank you, Julius. We would like to start by acknowledging the ancestral and traditional territories of the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, and the Huron-Wendat, who are the original owners and custodians of the land on which we stand and create. In a relational spirit, we are grateful for the opportunity to carry out creative and intellectual work on Turtle Island, the present-day home to a diverse population of Indigenous and other peoples, and respect the continued connections with the past, present, and future in forging decolonial relations with Indigenous and other peoples within Turtle Island, the Philippines, and beyond. With the recognition that this talk is taking place in a virtual space and that folks are joining us from various locations, I ask that you each take the time to acknowledge the rightful stewards of the land on which you are currently situated and reflect on the harms of the past and consider how we can move forward in the spirit of reconciliation. And now a few words from our president, Ana Serrano.
Good morning to those of you in Canada. Sa inyong lahat sa Pilipinas, magandang gabi. My name is Ana Serrano, and I'm the President and Vice Chancellor of OCAD University here in Toronto. For the next 5 days, we're gathering to watch the inaugural screening of 10 experimental short films from the unique and innovative virtual residency program, Narratives Through Global Space. I want to acknowledge that for us in Toronto, this event is taking place on the ancestral and traditional territories of the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, and the Huron-Wendat, who are the original owners and custodians of the land on which we stand and create. It is my great honor to be welcoming you all for this inaugural screening of Narratives Through Global Space, a unique and innovative virtual residency that brought together 20 filmmakers from 9 countries, spanning 5 time zones, led by 5 faculty across 3 universities, OCAD University, Mapua University, and NASCAD. I'd also like to say that it's particularly important for me to be doing this because I am Filipino, and seeing these kinds of collaborations take place between the Philippines, where I was born, and Canada, which is what I call home now, is really heartening. These screenings are a testament to the power of connection, inventiveness, and creativity as we prove once more that our capacity to create together is limitless. Led by artists, educators, and researchers, Professor Julius Manapul and Natalie Wahlberger from OCAD University, Professors John Javier Chavez and Roberto Ang from Mapua University, and Dr. Marissa Largo from NASCAD, Narratives Through Global Space 2021 showcases these series of 10 experimental short films from creators around the world. 10 Mapua University students in the Philippines collaborated with 10 creators from OCAD University, hailing from Canada, Portugal, Mexico, Iran, India, Hong Kong, China, and South Korea. These narratives bring together a variety of talent across various domains, from filmmakers, visual artists, digital artists, animators, photographers, writers, and musicians with diverse experiences to respond to issues of gender, sexuality, religion, language, and identity through global space. All of this during a pandemic. Despite time zone differences, distance, and of course the current isolation and different contexts in each of these spaces caused by that pandemic, these creative thinkers and makers have defied obstacles through daily virtual connections. These 20 creators were not able to meet in person during the production of this project, but their ideas, passions, and visions have collided into this one collaborative force. So sit back, turn off your cell phones, and enjoy this outstanding show of talent. Congratulations to all of you students who participated in this event, in this series. And it's really remarkable to be able to see the work that you have produced during these such difficult and uncertain times. And I know that you audience members out there will really enjoy the show.
To introduce the first film, entitled Defying Divinity by Evelyn, Trista, Baik, and Lauren Gabrielle Gonzalez. The COVID-19 pandemic has been a global health crisis, where as of May 2020, over 300,000 have died and almost 5 million people have been infected. In the midst of the global pandemic, religion has become essential to the public, putting a strain on many people who seek spiritual solace and guidance. In spite of the continuous increase of mass infection, people are still willing to attend religious places and practice religious activities, since it gives people stability and meaning. The documentary film Defying Divinity centralizes around how religion plays an important role in people's life, how religion guides these people in finding meanings and acceptance in the midst of suffering while engaging in the deepest questions of life. After depicting their religion and lives, we keep questioning what is the appropriate attitude as people who are willing to convey God's voice in a meaningful way. Once again, the film Defying Divinity.
The ancestor believed that 1,000 years ago, there was no land, sun, or stars. The world was only a great sea of water, a stretched sky. The natives believed that there is a supreme being who created the world and everything in it. From the ancient Philippine mythology, from deities, creation stories, mythical creatures, and beliefs. Bathala in Tagalog, Kaptan in the Visayas, Pamulak Manobo in Mindanao, the supreme gods who dwells in the sky worshipped by the natives. The old people believe that the gods are in control of natural occurrences, including the bad phenomena to punish the mortals for their sins. Long before the natives had a notion of monsters, who lives amongst us, lurking in the shadows by using a facade to hide their true selves. To many, they were known as religious people. They devotedly attended Mass each Sunday and sat in the front row. They listen attentively to the priest as he preaches. But when the sky starts to darken and the moon shines brightly at night, coming out the groves of trees where they are hidden, they pray and slaughter the youth or the sick, comes first sucking their warm blood and leaving nothing but a soulless body. They are hideous and carnivorous creatures, her thin body and slippery, the perfect feet to fly, and crawl through the opening, her rib, skin, muscle, and bone sticking out, her torso continues to elongate, her long jet black hair flows in the darkness, her sharp teeth alongside with her fingernails, digging into the victim's skin, the perfect tool for feasting on the warm blood of her victims. Her saliva flows out from her mouth, rolling for prey. The orbs of her fierce eyes were glowing red, penetrating and enabling her to see through a pregnant woman. But in a blood-red oil, the aroma of death surrounding the monster. Mga diablo! The villagers chanted in wishes to cast away the monster, fright still evident in their orbs. However, they cower in fear when they hear the aswang sing wak 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 wak. The aswang desperately cried out, "No, it was not a melodic cue. Let your mother lull you to sleep." It was a warning, a caution, that the aswang that the villagers feared is already waiting, already there, not far away from slaughtering her lucky victim of the night. The Visayan Islands are considered as the homes of the aswangs, for it is believed that the witchcraft and witches are prominent in the barrio of Leyte and Samar. Until now, the villagers have believed in these mythological creatures cowering in here when they hear the word aswang, because they bring bad juju's in the camp.
At home, we're closely monitoring developments on the new and more infectious coronavirus variant first detected in the United Kingdom that is now in the Philippines. Let's find out more.
The coronavirus disease 2019 or COVID-19 pandemic has become a global health crisis for areas as of 21 of May of 2020. Over 300,000 have died and almost 5 million people have been infected. In Philippines, this translates into more than 13,000 infected and almost 900 deaths.
The number of COVID-19 cases here in the country has now breached the 500,000 mark. We now talk to health spokesperson Undersecretary Maria Rosario Vergere.
The Philippines is the only country with a predominantly Catholic population. As a result of 4 centuries of Spanish Catholic colonial rule, the Catholic faith has become a part of Filipino culture. The Catholic practices and ethnic identity are intricately interwoven into cultural meanings of identity, family, and community. However, due to the pandemic and the government's lockdown policies, the church masses needed to be cancelled to ensure public safety, leading to putting a strain of many peoples who seek spiritual solace, guidance in times of health crisis.
There are always messages behind everything na dumarating sa buhay natin. This pandemic is no exception, no?
Yes.
Ang ano niyan, para sa akin kasi, para sa akin, ang pinaka-message talaga niyan is gratitude. It would really strike our core, no? Minsan, ang ang belief natin, mako-question natin yung belief natin. But yung relationship natin kay God, whether or not,
that there is someone great out there is looking out for us.
There are also existing mythological beliefs in one of the countries in Asia, South Korea. South Korea was also having a hard time dealing with religion regarding the handling of COVID-19 infection so far.
대전에서는 순복음 대전 우리 교회를 중심으로 집단 감염이 확산되고 있는데요.
인천에서는 기도 모임 참석자 4명과 2차 감염자까지 모두 8명이 줄줄이 확진됐습니다.
전해드린 대로 수도권 집단 감염의 진원지는 교회입니다. 기본적인 방역 수칙을 지키지 않았기 때문인데
30% 이상이 교회를 매개로 한 감염이 이루어지고 있습니다.
서울의 한 교회에서 집단 감염이 또 발생했는데
전파가 이루어진 시점은 지난 13일 122명이 참석한 일요일 예배였습니다.
주님이 원하신 대로 예배를 드리다가 어려움을 당한 사람들이 더 잘된 거라고. 그들이 더 복 있는 거라고.
So we were interested in how religion itself affects people in this disastrous era and found out some related points with the Philippines called musok, which is a traditional shamanism that has been existing in Korea for a long time.
무속이라는 거에 대한 정의를 보면 예전부터 토속신앙이라고 하죠. 저희가 당군 할아버지 그렇게 자손이 있듯이 옛날부터 사람들이 이런 토속신앙을 많이 해왔어요. 그렇기 때문에 무속신앙이라는 거는 우리나라만이 갖고 있는 하나의 수호신 이렇게 표현을 할 수가 있습니다.
굿으로 이제 과거의 사람이랑 현재의 사람이 이제 만날 수 있게 하는 그런 걸 본 적이 있어요. 그래서 뭔가 굿이나 이런 것들을 저는 보통 무속신앙이라고 생각을 해왔던 것 같아요.
불교랑 크게 다를 게 없다라고 생각을 하고 있었어요. 되게 비슷하다. 뭔가 전혀 다른 차원의 무언가가 아니라 그냥 우리나라에 있는 종교 중에 하나인데 서양에서 온 게 아닌.
무속신앙은 한국의 샤머니즘입니다. 한국의 샤먼, 즉 무당을 중심으로 한 토착 신앙이라고 볼 수 있고 그 신앙의 체계를 통해서 영혼육의 조화를 꾀하는 어떤 영적인 체계라고 생각합니다.
People are always eager to see the fortune, and as the evidence of this interest, there are numerous contents on YouTube telling the fortune of COVID.
무당이 하는 그런 유튜브를 본 적은 있었어요. 근데
And here, we have found the religious people who can give some perspective towards this situation.
안녕하십니까.
대한민국 서울 대방동에 있는 숭이 여자고등학교 교목실장으로 있는 정서학 목사입니다.
안녕하세요. 나비선녀 신소현입니다.
네, 안녕하세요. 저는 미국 뉴얼리언즈에서 신내림을 맡고 현재는 한국 강남구에서 활동 중인 무당입니다. 우선 코로나는 새로운 것을 낳으려는 이 대우주의 격통일 뿐 영적인 존재에 의한 현상은 아니라고 생각합니다. 현실적으로 접근해야 할 문제이고 아마도 절대시는 코로나나 지구에 그렇게 큰
세계적인 국가에서 걸린 병인데 이게 종교하고 무슨 의미가 있나? 저는 그런 생각이 듭니다.
또 의미 부여를 너무 과하게 하다 보니까 사람들이 잘못 이해하고 있는 것 같은데 인간이 저질러 놓은 문제는 맞죠. 왜냐하면 인간을 통해서 그 코로나 바이러스가 전파된 것이니까. 하지만 그 모든 것들을 어떤 미신적이거나 영적인 것으로 치부하지 아니하고 하나의 바이러스고 또 이 바이러스의 원인 제공이 또 인간이라는 것.
아무래도 이 비대면으로 진행을 하는 전화 점사 상담이 많아졌고 또 5인 이상 집합 금지가 되었기 때문에 곳간에서 의식을 진행할 때도 들어가는 선생님들 머리 숫자가 줄어드는 등 그 절차나 규모가 간소화되는 변화가 있습니다.
저희도 9시가 되면 절대 국당이나 그런 데에서 할 수가 없습니다. 거기도 영업장이라고 구슬하는 곳이 있어요. 국당이라는 곳이. 근데 그리고 인원이 5명 이상이 안 됩니다. 그렇기 때문에 인원은 더 참석이 되어야 되는데 그것 또한 제한을 받고 있습니다.
나이가 많으신 목회자분들이 사역하는 곳에서는 영상으로 예배드리기가 매우 어렵기 때문에 그런 것들을 호소하는 분들이 많고 또 연세가 많으신 분들이 유튜브라든지 또 줌 수업을 줌으로 함께 예배드리거나 또 유튜브로 실시간 예배드리기가 여간 쉽지는 않습니다. 그렇기 때문에 그러한 기술적인 면들은 큰 교회들이 함께 도와가면서 할 수 있을 것 같고요.
종교인은 종교인의 자리에 있을 때 가장 쓸모가 있고 빛이 난다고 생각이 들어요. 그래서 더욱더 성실한 기도 수행로 신도들의 삶이 조금 더 편안할 수 있게 그 방향성을 도와주는 것. 또 개인적으로는 영적으로 더욱더 각성하는 것. 그게 무당의 소임이라고 생각합니다.
이건 아무리 종교인이 아무리 하늘을 위해 빌어도 인간들이 잘못을 하면 그것 또한 무슨 의미가 있겠어요. 우리는 우리대로 열심히 빌면 또 천주교에서도 빌대고 종교에서도 빌대고 기독교에서도 빌대고 빌면 그거를 쫓아와 주시는 신도님들 더 열심히 쫓아와 줘야 된다고 생각을 합니다.
바깥에서 부정적이게 들리면 안에서는 아이들이 내가 기독교인인 것 자체를 숨겨요. 괜히 얘기했다가 욕먹을 것 같으니까 얘기를 못하는. 어떻게 보면 참 안타까운 현실이죠.
그러네요.
We're being totally miserable in the era of virus. And every day we are fighting against the virus. Religion is being a great hope to the tones of miserable people out there. Then, where would be the God's answer?
next film, entitled Makahiya, Ashamed, by Patricia Ann Nino and Isadora Malaya Bulaklak. The first animated story foretells the tragedy of a young boy wrought by the strangers who came into their village. In the beginning, the aswang, in Tagalog word, which translate into ghosts, together with the family of the young boy, lived quietly and peacefully. Their jobs were simply collecting firewoods, growing and gardening plants and trees, and hunting for food. However, due to the unexpected arrival of strangers in their village, the young boy began to struggle between change and tradition. Ending this dilemma, the young boy decided to leave his identity as an aswang because of fears of humiliation and shame. Here we learn about the outcome of colonialism and how its legacy is manifested in the Filipino society today. The second story is a story about a group of aswang living in an island. Every year, they have a festival in which they gather, feast, and honor their ancestors, asking for blessings of a good year. This grants them the power to keep the land safe. However, much would change when strange creatures come to their land. These creatures were unlike anything that the aswang had ever seen before. With the meeting would come a disruption to their way of life, their culture, and to the way that they saw themselves. Once again, I introduce you to film Makahiya, Ashamed.
Sa isang liblib na lugar, mayroong baryo na kung saan naninirahan ang iba't ibang uri ng aswang. Ang mga kapre ay nagpuputol ng panggatong, ang mga tikbalang at ang mga duwende ay nagtatanim at nagbabantay ng puno at halaman sa gubat. Sa baryong ito, mayroon ding nakatirang isang pamilya. Ang kanilang pamumuhay ay payak. Sa umaga ay umaalis ang ama upang magtrabaho sa merkado. Samantalang ang ina ay naiiwan sa bahay upang maglinis. At ang kanilang anak na lalaki ay tila simpleng bata tulad ng iba na nakatira sa nasabing baryo. Ngunit sa pagsapit ng gabi ay may kakaibang ginagawa ang mga magulang ng batang lalaki. Nang makatulog na ang kanilang anak, sila'y biglang magpapalit anyo. Ang kanilang katawan ay lumalaki. Ang buhok ay lumalago at humahaba, tila parang hayop dahil sa mga matutulis na pangil at kuko. Ang mata ay nag-iibang hugis at kulay. Lumiliksi at lumalakas ang kanilang katawan sa tuwing nagpapalit anyo. At sa dilim ng gabi, sila'y umaalis upang mangaso. Isang araw, naabutan ng bata na nagkukumpulan ang mga madla sa plaza ng kanilang baryo. Wala siyang kaalam-alam sa mga pangyayari kaya't kinalabit niya ang kanyang katabi at nagtanong kung anong mayroon. May mga estranghero na paparating sa baryo natin. Maraming dala at kakaiba rin ang itsura. Sinubukang sumulyap ng bata sa mga estranghero. Iba ang kanilang mga suot. Ang tela ay gawa sa mamahaling pabrika at sutla. Ang kanilang kulay ay puti at ang mga mata ay bughaw na kawangis ng langit. Sakay nila ang mga karwahe na bitbit din ang mga materyales at iba't ibang kagamitan. Totoo nga ang sabi nila, may mga estranghero na paparating sa baryo. Isa sa mga pinakainaabangan ng magulang ng batang lalaki ay ang kanyang pagbibinata. Sabi ng kanyang ina, maaari na raw siyang sumama sa kanila ng kanyang ama sa gabi. Sapagkat sa pagbibinata ng bata ay ang pagbabago ng kanyang katawan. Bumilis ang pagtubo ng malabalahibong buhok sa kanyang muka, braso at hita. Napansin ito ng kanyang mga kaklase. Ngunit hindi lamang ang pagbibinata ang nagbago sa kanyang paaralan. Ang mga anak ng mga estranghero na nakita niya sa plaza ay nasa kanyang paaralan na rin. Iba ang kanilang itsura. Mayroon raw silang ibang silid-aralan. May sarili rin silang mga gamit at pag-aaralan daw nila, panitikan, heograpiya, kasaysayan, relihiyon at iba pa. Sa bawat araw na pagpasok ng mga anak ng estranghero sa kanilang paaralan, sasaglit ng silip ang batang lalaki sa kabilang silid. Isang araw, nang nakatayo sa likod ng puno ang lalaki, may isang estranghero na papunta sa kanyang kinaroroonan. Nang nakita niya ang lalaki, nanlaki ang kanyang mata. Tinitigan niya ng may kasamang panghuhusga, pangungutya, at takot sa kaibahan ng itsura ng lalaki. Bakit ganyan ang itsura mo? Tanong ng estranghero. Bakit ganyan ang mga bisig at hita mo? Balot ng malago at mabalahibong buhok. Ang tindig at tayo mo. Tila handa kang mangdakma ng maliliit at walang kalaban-laban na bata tulad ko. At ang pangil at malakristal na pulang mata mo? Tignan mong sarili mo sa salamin at sabihin mong hindi ka nakakatakot. Sa pag-uwi ng batang lalaki, ginawa niya ang sinabi ng batang babae. Pinagmasdan niya ang kanyang sarili sa harap ng salamin. Totoo ang sabi ng mga tao sa kanya. Malaaso ang pagtubo ng buhok sa hita at braso. At ang pangil ay tumutulis ng kawari sa kanyang magulang. Hindi niya maintindihan kung bakit ang isang bagay na kinamamanghaan ng mga tao sa baryo at ang kanyang mga magulang ay maaaring nakakamuhi sa pananaw ng iba. Ayaw kong maging aswang. Kinatatakutan dapat ang mga aswang. Tignan mo ang itsura natin, inay. Sinong hindi matatakot sa atin? Anong alam nila? Bakit mo iniisip ang iniisip ng iba? Samantalang, estranghero lamang sila. Pasusupil ka ba sa mga iniisip nila? Oo, hindi nila tayo kilala. Ngunit, maski tayo, hindi rin natin sila kilala. Mas marami silang alam. Mas makabuluhan ang kanilang pinag-aaralan. Nakapaglakbay sila. Samantalang tayo, kulong tayo sa ating baryo at nangangaso pagsapit ng buwan sa langit. Anong alam natin, ina? Sa gabing iyon, buo ang buwan. Ngunit hindi lumisan ang magulang ng lalaki upang mangaso. Puno ng pagkadismaya at sakit ang puso ng kanyang ina na hindi niya nakayanang mag-ibang anyo na ayon sa kanilang pangangaso. At sa naturing gabing iyon, doon nabatid ng batang lalaki na hindi niya nais ng maging aswang tulad ng kanyang pamilya. Nais niyang mapabilang sa mga uri ng mga estranghero na dumating sa kanilang baryo. Ngunit kahit ang mga estranghero ay pinagkakaitan siya ng nais niya. Tinakwil din siya tulad ng pagtakwil sa kanya ng estranghero na nakakita sa kanyang pisikal na anyo.
Taon, itinaraos ang isang masigabong pista sa isang malawak ng islang pinagtitipunan ng mga aswang. Ang malawakang pagpupulong ito ay gaganapin ng mga aswang upang makapagbigay-pugay sa mga ninuno at diwatang may matatalinghagang espiritu. Naririto ang mga aswang na pawang may mga bagong ngiti sa kani-kanilang mga muka sapagkat sumapit na naman ang taon upang mapagpasalamatan ang mga espiritong nakapagbigay gabay sa kani-kanilang buhay. Sa pagsasaayos ang nalalapit na okasyon, ang mga aswang ay nakapaghanda ng mga altar ng gagamit sa pagsamba. Sila rin ay nakapagluto na ng hahainin mararayang pagkain. Mabuhay tayong mga aswang. Mabuhay tayong mga aswang. Kung hindi marahil tayo ginagabayan ng ating mga ninuno, ang ating lahi ay tuluyang manghihina. Ani ng pinunong aswang sa kalagitnaan ng pista. Nang sila ay nakapagsimba na at nakapaghain, sila naman nagsiawit mga kantang pagpupugay. Ito na ang pinakamayamang ng pista ang dinaluhan. Panggit na isang baguhang aswang. Hindi ba ito ang iyong magiging huli, aking kapatid? Tugon ng kanyang kapwa aswang. Sa buong pista, naganap umaalingasaw ang mga matatalinhagang kapangyarihan nangyayari sa buong lupain. Sa malawak ng sakop nito, ang kapangyarihan taglay ng mga aswang ang siyang nakapangalaga sa lupa upang ito'y hindi ipahamak. Ngunit ang lahat kanilang nararanasan ay magbabago nang may biglang dumating sa kanilang lupain. Ang mga ito ay naiiba sa mga aswang sapagkat ang kanilang mga balat ay kasing liwanag ng hasmin na bulaklak. Sila'y walang mga pakpak o kuko. Kahit pa balahibo o kaliskis ay hindi rin matatagpuan sa kanilang anyo. Tunay na nga silang kakaiba dahil wala silang matutulis ng ngipin at may mga kakaibang uri ng pananamit na hindi na nasisilayan ng kahit na sinumang aswang sa isla. Ang mga kakaibang nilalang na ito ay hindi pa kailanman nakakaalam ng katauhan ng aswang. Sa kabilang hukbo naman, ang mga aswang ay hindi rin nakikilatis ang uri ng mga nilalang na ito. Parehong kapwang panig ang walang kaalam-alam sa kakayahang taglay ng bawat hukbo. Ang mga nilalang ay takot sa katangian ng aswang sapagkat hindi nila kayang unawain sila. Nang dahil rito, isang malaking kaguluhan ay lumitaw sa dalawang panig na ito. Makalipas ang ilang taon, nabago ang lupain dahil hindi na mapangalagaan ng aswang. Marami ang nagbago mula nang tumuntong ang mga nilalang sa isla. Ang mga aswang ay hindi na nakapagdiriwag na kanilang masigabong mga pista kada taon. Wala na silang kapangyarihan gabay mula sa mga espiritu at mga ninuno. Ang kanilang namang mga bahay-simbahan ay winasak na mga nilalang upang sila ay makapagpatayo ng infrastrukturang alay ng kanilang kultura. Nawala na ang pagdiriwang nila pero ang kanilang mga awit ay nananatili pa rin sa kanilang mga puso. Upang ang mga aswang ay makihalubilo sa mga pisikal na katanggihan ng mga nilalang na dumating sa kanilang isla, ginumpit nila ang kanilang pakpak, Inahit nila ang kanilang makapal na balahibo at nagsuot ng mga puting maskara. Ang mga ibang aswang ay piniling manatiling sa mga tagong lugar upang hindi makahalubilo ibang nilalang. Sila'y may takot sa presensya ng mga ito. Hindi lamang mga aswang ang umalis at nagtago sa malayong lugar. Ang mga duwende ay nagtago sa mga puno kanilang ginawang tirahan at sila'y lumalabas lamang kapag kinakailangan depensahan ang kanilang mga tirahan. Ang mga tikbalang naman ay nagtago sa matataas na bundok habang tinatakot ang kahit ng sinumang tumangkang umakyat sa mga ito. Ang kararamihan na rin ng mga sirena ay mas pinipili ng lumang manatili sa tubig kasya sa umapak sa lupain na ang isla. Walang ni isang nakakaalam kung nakatitira pa na nga bang mga sirena sa tubig dagat sapagkat ang tubig na kanilang tinitirahan ay napapalibutan na ng dumi mula ng sinakop ng mga nilalang ang buong isla. Pagkalipas ng panahon na dumidikit ang puting maskara sa mukha ng mga aswang. Habang tumatagal ito ay napapasa sa bawat henerasyon. Ang mga aswang sa bagong henerasyon ito ay ipinanganak ng suot-suot ang mga mapuputing maskara. Kapag may isang bata na may nakita ang anomalya, ito ay kanilang itatago. Sa kanilang mga paglaki, sila ay tuturuang itago ang kanilang mga katangian naman mula sa kanilang mga ninuno. At ito'y kalalakihan nila isang kahihiyaan sa kanilang buhay.
And now we will hear from the filmmakers. And if you have any questions at all for the filmmakers, we have the Q&A box at the bottom. Just type your question that they can answer as well. So now I will introduce all the panelists. We'll start off with the students. First, we have Evelyn Trista Baik. Evelyn Trista Baik is a creative director, photographer, writer, and model based in Toronto, Canada, and Seoul, South Korea. Born and raised in Seoul, she has an obvious identity as an Asian woman and living in North America, attending OCAD University as a photography student. Her work have been motivated by those traditional traits as Korean women living in Western culture. Furthermore, since she loves to pay attention in all her beings, their tears, their sacrifice, her life is being filled with the creative, dreamlike stories of human society. By creating and capturing the moment of stories from hurt beings, she continuously quilting her story quilt under the name of photography and media arts. Next, we have Gabrielle. Lauren Gabrielle Gonzalez is a second-year multimedia art student specializing graphics from Manapul University. She is the director of Defying Divinity a partnership film between OCAD University. She aspires to be a film director in the near future, aiming to introduce her Filipino heritage and beliefs to the international scene. And in the next film, we have Isadora Malaya Bulaklak, is a Takaronto-based Philippine-born artist. Their disciplines includes drawing, painting, installation, video, and sound. Being a part of the Filipinx diaspora, much of their work speaks back to their experience from both countries. Isadora often takes inspiration from folklore and mythologies, incorporating elements of creatures and figures of their art. Isadora also takes inspiration from street art, combining materials such as spray painting and makers with traditional and digital medium. They enjoy collaging different elements and contextualizing them into new forms and hope to continue exploring new techniques and medium. And their partner, Patricia and Nino, who cannot make it with us due to emergencies. Patricia is a filmmaker based in the Philippines. Her work are mainly documentary and experimental films, all of which are inspired by her personal experience and social issues. Anne pursues film because she believes in the importance of film and delivering authentic, relevant, and impactful message. The same values she holds for herself. And our guest faculty is Dr. Fritz Pino, pronoun she, her. Dr. Fritz Pino is an assistant professor at University of Regina, faculty in social in Saskatchewan, Canada. Her research focuses on the lives and experiences of historically marginalized communities, particularly those who identify as LGBTQ+, racialized migrant, and older adults. Born and raised in Cebu, Philippines, she engages with transnational, decolonial, qualitative research approaches in social work to bring out the culture nuances that historically marginalized groups embody and use to resist forms of colonialism, imperialism, neoliberalism, structural violence, and normalcy. Currently, Dr. Pino is the principal investigator of two research projects, one that focuses on the 2S LGBTQ+ people in Saskatchewan, and the other on the IBPOC residents in the city of Regina. I introduce you to the panelists for today. Fritz, maybe if you could start, if you have any question to the panelists from today, and today's topic, once again, really talks about belief, folklore, intergenerational connections.
Thank you so much, Julius, and thank you everyone for inviting me to this amazing global event. I could see this wonderful collaboration between Philippine students and also OCAD University students. Is just an amazing example of how we could develop art collaboratively and globally as well, and especially in relations or thinking about race and identity, culture, as well as intergenerational connection. So maybe what I'm gonna do, I'll talk briefly about the first film, then followed by the second film, and then I have maybe general questions for both. So in the first film, Defying Gravity, sorry, like all of the song in my mind.
Defying Divinity.
And then the second film is Makahiya. The Makahiya really both film really brings me back home to the Philippines where I was born and raised. And I've spent, I've moved to Canada when I was in my early 20s after finishing my, degree in psychology there. So I'm very much attuned to the cultural nuances there as well. Makahiya, I could also remember there was a story about Makahiya, the shrinking mimosa. I don't know if people who has been in public school in the Philippines. I was in grade 3 then when we were reading that story, cuento of Makahiya, which is like a shrinking mimosa, and which is also relevant. It's kind of like showing some relevance on the film as well. For Defying Divinity, it really allows us to think about, the role of that aswang there, and how the aswang is, because in both films, the aswang is used differently. In Defying Divinity, the aswang is seen as those who are doing some pretense that they will become monstrous figure at night, but at the same time participating religion, and the ways in which during COVID-19 people, the spirituality and religiosity of people are being barred because of the pandemic, and there is no aswang. I'm an aswang too.
And could we start recording again, Saida?
Yeah, we're all set to go.
Perfect. Once again, we apologize for the technical difficulties. I think spirits and aswangs has infiltrated the computers. We all just been kicked out, but we're back again. We'll just take time for some of the guests and some of the panel speakers to slowly trickle in. I apologize, Fritz, in the midst of your comments for that to happen. Let's continue.
Okay. So what I'm trying to say in the first film is the use of aswang there. It's a very powerful metaphor for me as someone reading it, for a politician, local politicians who are very much engaged in religion and spirituality during pre-pandemic. But when it comes to conversations around taking action on how to support and allowing people to find healthy ways in which people could still access religion and spirituality, and they are not able to fully attend to that piece. So it's really allowing us to see relations of power between local people and those who are doing some sort of, governmental rule, and the ways in which religion are being considered important or not important from those people who are in power. So, and in the second film, the aswang there is also being used differently because it really is a metaphor of natives, Filipinos. There is that clear colonial encounter that is going on, and the ways in which we are, as Filipinos, as historically marginalized subjects, we have been stereotyped, named differently, and read or considered our body as wrong. We are a monstrous figure in relation to the white, or even I would also gender it by using white masculine gaze. So, and how those particular types of stereotypes and colonial mentality continues to influence throughout generations. So the white masks is no longer just a mask, an object of adornment, but it's become part of the aspiration and desire of the deemed monstrous figure. So that wonderful juxtaposition and use of the aswang there. The aswang as the pretend. What do you call it? How do you say it? Yung nagpakukunwari in Filipino, the pretending politician, and aswang as the colonized subject. And
faking it, I think
yeah.
it translates to faking it.
Mhm. So my questions maybe for both, and thank you so much for this wonderful showing and showcasing of the film. If you could speak a little bit more about resistance in both films, in what way your film continued to offer, you know, messages of resistance against the dominant, and how it also project that kind of pedagogy or teaching to the general public in terms of the modes of resistance that your film is also trying to show, to educate to the world.
Should I go first? Okay, hello everyone, and thank you for a wonderful question. And so you just mentioned about the resistance against some kind of like dominant culture. And then actually we've discussed about some kind of like Philippines traditional folk tales and some kind of like traditional beliefs. And also I have mentioned about Koreans on traditional religion inside our films. And I think the common things for two stops are just kind of they are very, very being like not really being obvious from the dominant culture in nowadays, and people are not really aware of what kind of beliefs are existing in their culture unless they don't really have any interest in their history, right? And so therefore I wanted to highlight that those kind of traditional beliefs has been existed in our both countries for more than 100 years, and it has been, I think it's really becoming a very important cultural kind of root that we can exist. And also now is kind of a pandemic era, and religion is becoming, I'm not really sure why it is, but still I'm really questioning about it. But people are really eager to pay attention in their original religion, like regardless of what kind of religion they have. They really want to pay attention to the religion, like attending their mass gathering and just meet other people and try to pray and try to, like pray to God, like, and so, but there is still a lot of problem of the mass gathering because of the mass infection of during this pandemic, and it's really becoming like being banned from government under the hard restriction. But I'm not really sure what is happening in other countries, but here in Korea, people were really, really eager to gather regardless of those kind of restrictions. And I was really curious and still curious about it. Like, how does the religion like play this kind of like super like very important power to their life? Like, do they still believe that power of God will help them escape and overcome this kind of pandemic more easily when they do, like compared to people do not have their religions? And I was trying to question out, and like it has been more than a year, and this film was originally created about almost 6 months ago, right? Yeah. And then I like to question out what kind of like differences has been made into both countries. Like still people are still eager to find out some kind of like help from their religions, or do they some people, like a lot of people may have given up something from their religions, or and maybe some kind of restrictions have been become like less powerful than before, so maybe people can easily have some kind of like access to those kind of mass gatherings regarding their religions. And yeah, so I just wanted to question out what has been a difference in this kind of era of the first almost an anniversary of pandemic. Yeah.
Well, it's great to hear that the film also symbolizes kind of like, I guess, the questioning of your thoughts, of your curiosity of how religion becomes an anchor or becomes a distance to some communities as well. Lauren, what's your thoughts on that same question?
I think I have the same question as Evelyn, but to add is that Catholicism plays like a big role in our community, and it has been passed through generation from generation. And this Catholicism has a role in affecting our protocols, our laws in the Philippines, and it has been a big impact actually because most of our laws centralized around the church, and we have to at least get an input from the church before putting a law. So there are a lot of laws that we have to depend on the church. So yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, that's quite interesting as well. Isadora, do you have any answers in comments towards Fritz's question?
Yeah, but before that, I also would like to make a comment because you were talking about the Philippines and the connection between church and state. And I just wanted to, there was a part of the film in which there was the Bible, and it was written in like this Latin script, but also juxtaposed to that, it was written also in like a traditional Baybayin script.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just thinking about like how you guys managed to like make this connection between colonial legacy and religion, and how that was sort of like and how it's sort of been used as a means of domination and subjugation.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was a really interesting part.
That is interesting. I'll loop in Fritz back again to the question.
Yeah, that's a very good observation. I was actually wondering about that piece too, and I'm also thinking about the engagement of spirituality and religion, and how in connection to Isadora's comments of the colonizing history of Christianity in there. And I am actually thinking about on defying divinity, in what ways in which the virus becomes, is it a political gift because it showcases or produces dissident subjects, and dissident subjects here are those that could be anywhere. It could be you as filmmakers, it could be also people who are trying to disengage with the state, but also at the same time, in what way in which we could also continue to honor some of the cultural nuances and beliefs of people in relation to religion and spirituality. Yes, indeed, a religion, Christianity is a colonizing, as a history of colonizing. I actually wrote a chapter on that for a book on spirituality, the way in which LGBTQ Filipinos engage in spirituality and religion. And I kind of coined the term emotional contradiction, because it's kind of a contradictory, position to be in terms of you are experiencing spirituality through a religion that has historically marginalized or, violated you, but you are still there. You are not separate. You still have a rosary in your hand. So when it comes to these things, it's a very complex scenario. But what I'm also hoping to understand is to, have that balance of honoring the agency of people who are engaging into religion and spirituality, and in what ways perhaps the critique around religion and spirituality could be much more complex and nuanced, rather than a black and white kind of like engagement. That's just my thought, because I also grapple with that a lot.
It's a great concept, interesting to fathom towards the religion and how that kind of structure of a contradictory is quite interesting. So if any of the filmmaker have any thoughts or remarks towards Fritz's question, and I also encourage other faculties like Largo, Wahlberger, or Chavez to, if you have any inputs as well. I welcome the table for any kind of remarks.
Fritz, if I might add on to your question, your comments, your observations, I think they're very apt. And, these films coming together really position that dialogue. I guess I wonder too how the virus, the kind of resulting language, fear, the cultural kind of shifts that are taking place globally in response to that fear. I wonder how this virus has amplified this question. We're seeing challenged by an unknown, this transmission of some sort of thing that's making changes in people's bodies at a mass scale and causing. So, I wonder, I think that making your videos in response to this kind of time, even if it's not rationally in your mind, because I think that's the problem I'm having now. I'm wondering too how the religion as an institution and the spirituality and worldviews, traditional worldviews, how that comes together. And you've sort of presented us with an open-ended dialogue about it. And now then, as you reflect, as you look at the two films together and you think about what we've gone through the last year and a bit, how do you see that? How do you observe exactly what Fritz has described, these sort of contrasts, and there's a power imbalance too there, right? There's colonialism kind of embedded in all of that.
Yeah, thank you, Natalie. That's great. It's almost kind of like rethinking, how does belief play a part in your life? Evelyn, Lauren, Isadora, if you have any thoughts.
Oh, yeah, sure. I'll go first. And first of all, before I started, I would like to mention that this is not kind of a complete opinion of our religion. This is just my opinion. I like to mention that first. And actually, historically, Korea was colonized by Japan first, and then after that, Korea was politically got a lot of effect from U.S. or any of the other, like China or Russia, any of the other, a lot of strong countries surrounding territorially, and so like in kind of a religion way, so like Korean ancient traditional beliefs was really colonized as well, such as like all of this kind of like religious people started to hide themselves, like, and then they started to pretend that their religion is officially a Buddhism, not a Korean traditional Mosok, and people are usually saying that their like their space for praying is kind of as like or really same as temple, like which is usually used in Buddhism, not really in Korean ancient traditional religion. And then also like throughout this pandemic, people were like a lot of people outside from this religious area started to think about like those people who are in religions. It's regardless of what kind of religion do you have, like if someone is having their religion as Catholic or like something the other, like they were like the outside people started to think that they are really eager to this kind of religion and they're crazy about it, they're obsessed with that, and they cannot really understand what is really happening out in reality. And then those kind of conception made those kind of religious people in traditional way hide themselves a lot way more. So throughout, while I was like trying to figure out like, is there anyone who would like to interview throughout this film, I contacted almost 50 people, and then only one or two just answered me. And then I could finally barely contacted with them and had some interview, but they were really afraid of like is my interview will affect some kind of like badly in this kind of religious area, like in regarding this kind of like conception of outsider people. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this kind of pandemic is really becoming a big barrier to spread out that like their beings are existing now. That was my thought.
Thank you, Evelyn. Isadara or Lauren, any thoughts?
Well, I guess from the question before on how do we relate to our spirituality or religion. I grew up in a very Christian household, and I'm not a very religious person, but I see sort of learning about the past and learning about the spiritual beliefs of pre-colonial Philippines as a means of decolonization, and I guess in terms of my film, sort of like unraveling that white mask and learning more about like your culture and where you come from, and sort of like trying to learn about like your history.
Mm-hmm. Well, what I find so powerful about your film, Isadara, and your partner Patricia, is how it talks about folktale, but it really reflects on the contemporaries of what we go through right now. Especially at the end, it really affected me, as I'm pretty sure it affected a lot of migrant diasporic Filipinos who have to immigrate outside of the Philippines to westernized countries, and also within the Philippines, how whitewashing is still predominant. And I think that's why sometimes when it's that dynamic between in the Philippines back home, our parents say, stay out of the sun, malis ka na sa araw, you don't want to, you want a pale skin, you don't want to whitewash yourself. Then we come to westernized countries looking at all these people tanning. Oh, what the hell's going on? Why are people tanning? We don't, So there's this dichotomy of like values of self between the two perspective, which I find so interesting, and how I just have to put it up front that, whitewashing products is still pretty big, and it's still kind of consciously kind of like, is this wrong? Why am I doing this? It's kind of like just self-acceptance. And this is how this ideology of neo-colonialism is still prevalent within societies today. It's damaging, and it makes us ashamed of our roots as well. And I found that little tidbit was so important. And I just love how the artwork of your performance of when you were whitewashing yourself, in contrast to the childhood photos of painting it white. It's so symbolic. It's reminding me of like those Eskinol products in the Philippines, those skin whitening toners. It's it really kind of questions and highlights those nuances and aspects of it, right? Which is, I find so interesting. Lauren, so sorry to just interject there. Lauren, any thoughts? I know we've covering a lot of topics between religion, colonialism, folklore, COVID, how all of this kind of really complex topics really put a standpoint within your narrative, within your project as well, and your thoughts, your own beliefs as well.
Actually, when I was creating this film, I'm not a Catholic. I did not practice this religion, so I had to interview a lot of friends, a lot of family, because Catholicism is a predominant religion in the country, and it has been passed through generations, and it has been a difficult process for me. But when I was reviewing the interviews, it has opened my mind actually about why these people are still practicing this religion, and how it became their anchor during the pandemic. Because it has it became their parang solace during the pandemic. So yeah, to clear out for you guys, the first part of the movie is actually a timeline how our religion has been changed or shifted through Christianity, because before we also have there are beliefs in the babaylan, or the witch doctors. They have their own religion. So I have created the timeline so we can to showcase the people how our religion has shifted to Catholicism. So there's that.
Perfect. We have a few comments on the Q&A board. Luis mentioned it does in Mexico as well. Yeah, it's like the Catholicism within Mexican culture predominantly. We have a question for Victoria Nguyen. At one point during Defying Divinity, the child in the animation laments to his mother that the colonizing strangers get to study important subjects such as history, literature, and geography. Bias towards Eurocentric academia has been prevalent through events in history such as the so-called rise of the West, and is still romanticized today. As students and scholars during studying the humanities, has this whitewashing affected your academic experience, and how so? I know this question is directed to Defying Divinity, but it could easily go to the other film as well. Any thoughts from Victoria's question?
I can just say.
Sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Isadora, go ahead. No.
I just wanted to say, within art, there has historically been this sort of hierarchy as to what is considered acceptable. For example, like neoclassicism and these very idealized Roman and Greek figures that you see in those paintings or in marble sculpture. And I think that has sort of like been the standard for so long that, you know, we need to challenge that. And that's why movements and different movements have popped up as a means of like resisting against what is considered by those the dominant culture, what they consider as acceptable.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. Marissa?
I'd like to add on to Isadara's comment and also to bring it back to Fritz's comment about how we all have agency. And I think that events like this, Narratives Through Global Space, do present a form of resistance to Eurocentric pedagogies and canons in art history and art making. And that's why this is important. The fact that we are in a shared space and we're all Asian diasporic scholars and creators. And this is a space that we had to make for ourselves. And so just to bring it back to that point that we all have artistic and intellectual agency, and that we need to continue doing this work.
Absolutely. This is it. It's now happening.
And may I just share my last comment? We don't have time anymore. Yes. I would like to commend the filmmakers, the young filmmakers. Very good films. Actually, the films that you created is actually a testimony also of some sort of passive resistance to, you know, the colonialism that's still taking place right now. All these things, we were colonized also by the Spaniards, the Americans, and we were also under the brutal hands of the Japanese, just like the Koreans, as what Evelyn said. And actually, what we did was some sort of cultural assimilation. But it is at the same time, we are also fighting a colonial power. So, and I'd like to commend my Canadian counterparts. I'm amazed how you curated actually the themes in this 5-day event. I'm impressed. Thank you.
Thank you so much for those words, Chavez. Yes, Evelyn.
I just wanted to make a little point to Victoria's question. Yep. While I was contacting all of the contributors in regarding especially for the animation part, I firstly posted some ads that I'm looking for an animator on our OCAD Use Facebook page, but I finally made my mind up that it'd be not really a good way to work with Western people, and because our film is completely talking about the Asian society, and there might be some kind of romanticizing happening from Western perspective, seeing towards our Asian cultures. And I thought the best way is to keep working with Asian people, and that's why I just decided to work with Korean fellows and who might don't really have any fantasy throughout the Oriental stuffs, cultural stuffs, and therefore I think our animation happened. There were not really a lot of romanticizing of from the perspective of the Western countries, and that was my point.
Thank you so much. Any last remark to point in, Lauren?
When I was making the film, I really wanted to present how Philippines was colonized, and I wanted to represent, of course, our stories. While I was in this collaboration, I have learned so many things from Evelyn, and it has opened my mind about the similarities that we had. So in this project, it's the inspiration that I have is being represented or representing Filipinos and our cultural beliefs. So that's why that I have put our folklore, our belief system, so to represent who we are and not just like being misrepresented as Pacific Islanders, because we have been misinterpreted or identified as those kind of people. So yeah, this platform has given me to represent us. So as Southeast Asians, we show our story.
Thank you so much, Lauren, which really highlights very well why this platform and these projects are quite important. Just to close in, I invite the guest speaker, Fritz or Marissa or Natalie or Mr. Chavez, if you have any last remarks before we part. I know we're running a little later than usual because of technical difficulties, but we went through that.
I just want to quickly say thank you so much, and what a wonderful work, everyone. And congratulations to everyone, to all of you, for the artists, filmmakers, and all the organizers of this amazing event. I hope there will be more conversations on this. And so I'm imagining this is just the start of the beginning of a more, generative dialogue, and a more, because we need to continue the conversation, and we need to also honor the works of artists and put it out there, both within and outside academia. So congratulations, everyone, and thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much, Fritz. Marissa, would you like to close the event?
Yes, thank you so much, first of all, to our audience for bearing with us as we dealt with the aswang in the machine. And thank you to our wonderful discussant, Dr. Fritz Pino, who brought life experience and intellectual rigor to today's conversation. Your analytic of emotional contradiction is so useful in thinking about these films today. Maraming salamat to Professor Manapul, Professor Waldberger, Professor Chavez, and Professor Ong, and other staff and faculty of Mapua University and OCAD University. Thank you to our wonderful student filmmakers today, and Patricia, Isadara, Evelyn, and Lauren. To our promotional partners, Real Asian International Film Festival. And a big thank you to Behind the Scenes, OCAD U IT and OCAD U Live, Renzi, Sayeda, and Adam. Also a big thank you to the Collaborative Online International Learning staff, Jasmine Obando and Jenny Sudik. And finally, to the Office of the President of OCAD University, President Anna Serrano. Thank you to everyone.
And thank you as well to Marissa Largo. And join us tomorrow for our next topic, talking about constructing self through experimental femininities and queerness in film. Until then, we'll see you next time. Bye.